So please lie on your backs. And today we're going to go into a more in-depth exploration about the particular way that your brain tells your muscles to hold you together. And in that exploration, you may discover more asymmetries than symmetries, more differences than similarities. And it's interesting to watch what your mind does with this information. As I went through my Feldenkrais training, I became more and more and more asymmetrical, and it became really disturbing, as if I was maybe failing in some way, thinking I should feel more and more balanced, more and more symmetrical. And over time, what I've learned to appreciate is that it's the differences that gives my brain something to be curious about, something to be interested in, and even playful with. So as you're lying there, just begin to be curious about the differences. The differences between your right and left shoulders. Which shoulder is drawn up a little closer to your ear? Which shoulder can you feel a little more muscular effort in, holding it possibly away from the floor? Which shoulder feels more relaxed and surrendered to the support of the floor beneath you? Feel the right and left sides of the back of your ribs. Can you tell which side has more contact? In your imagination, could you count how many ribs are resting on the floor on the right side compared to the left side, below the shoulder blade? And what about the small of your back as it curves gently away from the floor? For some of you, you may feel completely relaxed in your lower back. And for others of you, you may actually feel your muscles holding your lower back in its arched position. And can you tell how the muscles are behaving on the right side compared to the left? Is there the slightest bit more relaxation on one side, or contact with the floor? And following with your attention down to your pelvis and buttocks area. More or less weight on the left or right side. More or less tension or contact. Which leg feels heavier? And if you don't know, just guess. There are no right or wrong answers. Which leg feels lighter, longer, more tensed, more relaxed? Which foot is more relaxed, more restful? Which of your hands is more ready to reach or grasp than the other? And is it your dominant hand? For some of you, maybe it's the other hand. Why would that be? And if you're able to lie without a pillow under your head, please do so. But if it's too uncomfortable, by all means, keep the static of discomfort out of your system. Sometimes, rather than a pillow, you can just fold up a towel just to lift your head a little bit and decrease the strain on your neck, rather than the bulkiness of a pillow. So very gently, begin turning your head just a little bit, just an inch or so to the right, slowly, and to the left. And feel for that very first place of resistance. That very first place when you're turning, where you would effort just the slightest amount past something that's holding you back. And as you turn your head a little to the right and a little to the left, notice which is your easier side. If for the rest of this lesson you were going to turn your head only one way, and it was the easy way, which way would you choose? Would you turn it a little right every time or a little left? Notice what your mind does with that information. So often we pick the difficult side and assume there's something wrong with it, and we go to work at fixing it. So again, bring your attention to which side is just the easiest, most natural way of turning your head. And then keep turning your head to that side, the side that is easier. And notice when you roll your head, do you tilt it also a little? Do you bring your ear a little closer to your shoulder or a little farther away? So let's say the easiest way to roll your head is to the left. Notice, does your left ear get closer to your shoulder as you turn your nose to the left? Or does your left ear lift a little bit away from your shoulder? And play with each of those. And just find, is there just the slightest more three-dimensionality to that turning of your head? Again, and go with the direction that seems easiest. And if you can't tell, just guess. Just go with your first guess. And stay with it. Rolling your head and tilting it just a little bit. Up or down. And then just pause for a moment. And bring your attention to your shoulder that's on the side of your body in the direction of which you're turning your head. So if you're turning your head to the left, bring your attention to your left shoulder. If you're turning your head to the right, then you will give your attention to your right shoulder. And just begin to raise that shoulder up just a little bit forward towards the ceiling and relax it. Bring it a little up and down. And notice, as you raise it a little bit up, does that tend to invite your head to roll a little bit towards your shoulder? Or does it tend to invite your head to roll in the opposite direction, away from your shoulder? So play with raising that shoulder up to the ceiling a little bit, and alternating it with raising the opposite shoulder up towards the ceiling a little bit. And find out which one's easiest and which one's most congruent with continuing to roll and tilt your head to the easiest side. And we're going to just keep growing and growing one direction of movement, beginning to add pieces of your body, moving them in the direction that you're most inclined to move easily. So your head rolls and tilts, and one of your shoulders is more inclined to lift a little towards the ceiling than the other one. And you combine those motions together. Sometimes maybe you lift your shoulder and your head just follows. Other times you roll your head a little bit to the side and you notice that your shoulder just comes along with the lifting. And as you've identified which shoulder is it that lifts in concert with the rolling and tilting of your head to your most favorable side, notice, does that shoulder also raise a little towards your ear or away from your ear. So it might lift up a little bit towards the ceiling, or it might press down a little bit towards the floor. And simultaneously it might also raise a little bit towards your ear, towards your head, or it might lower a little bit more towards your feet. And do what you can to let go of thinking and just feel. Feel what's invited to move in your head, your neck, and your shoulder each time you roll your head to the preferred side. Each time you let your neck and your shoulder follow along. And begin to listen elsewhere in your body. What is this movement begin to speak to in your arms? For the arm that feels more movement in the shoulder which it is attached to, does that arm want to roll a little in or a little out? You roll your head, your shoulder comes along for the ride in one form or another, and you just let your arm soften and roll a little bit in or out. And again, without so much thinking, just feeling the cells in your body expand and relax and follow the movement. It's like if you were to take a stick and put it in the water and drag it through the water. All the rest of the other water molecules in that vicinity would follow along the pattern of movement that that stick made in the water that it touched, but it would affect the water in the vicinity for quite a while. So you roll your head, you feel your shoulder lifting up and down, you feel the influence allowing your arm to roll in or out. And simultaneously as you do this movement, does your other arm want to roll in or out? Is there a pattern that's beginning to open as you open into the pattern and you feel the movement, and then you sort of come back to your neutral resting point. You move into what's easy. You just let your body glide there, and you feel how you bring yourself back to neutral. Is there more effort in moving the parts of your body that are following along with the rolling of the head? Or is there more effort in bringing yourself back to neutral? Rolling your head, feeling the associated movements in your shoulders, your arms, and what about your hands and fingers? Do your fingers want to curl slightly or open? Does your wrist want to turn in or turn out? Extend the sensations. Invite the whole of your arm, your wrist, your hand to just come along with your head. Your head moves and the ripples are felt throughout the aquatic system in your body, as if everything's just floating and flowing along with you. And feeling your breathing. Are you pacing, going into the movement and coming out of the movement in any particular way with your inhalations and exhalations? What's natural with your breathing? And then just pause for a moment. Just let yourself rest. Going in and out of a one-directional movement. Well, sometimes it's good to take a break and just wiggle a little here, a little there. Lying quietly on one's back for an extended period of time has its own taxing on the nervous system. We are moving, wiggling beings. So if you feel the need to wiggle a little bit, take the opportunity now. And then come back to the initial movement, feeling your head roll, your shoulders respond, your arms, your forearms, your wrists and your hands, just gliding effortlessly into the preferred movement and back to neutral. And let's see what else we can discover. What else can you bring attention to come along with this movement? As your head rolls, your neck turns, and therefore may have influence on the rest of your spine. Feel the rotation down your spine and any influence it may have on your ribs. Do your ribs widen a little on one side, shorten a little on the other? I like to use the image of an accordion when thinking about our ribs. So often, the image we have is quite static as we refer to this area of our bodies as a rib cage, when in truth there's so much mobility in each of your ribs attached to each side. And as one side shortens, the other side lengthens. As the other side shortens, the first side lengthens, like an accordion. So see if you can feel just the slightest potential of movement in this sort of form happening within you. As you roll your head, your spine turns, your shoulders follow, your hands follow, your ribs. And you may notice as you tune into your ribs and your arms that one arm actually lengthens a little bit as the other one shortens. And it might not. You might not feel called to some of these movements I'm suggesting, but notice if one hand reaches downward a little bit, or if you feel the inclination for one hand to slide upward on your mat a little bit. Each time you roll your head, again letting the ripples of movement be felt through your body, softening the holding patterns, letting go of the muscular contractions that get in the way of feeling smooth, effortless movement. And following further down your trunk with your attention into your pelvis. What is your pelvis invited to do? You can just let your head rest for a moment and bring your attention to your pelvis. And try some movements of putting a little more weight through one side than the other, rotating your pelvis left and right. That's one way your pelvis moves. Rolling side to side, and just notice as you're just doing the pelvis without the other movements of your head and trunk and arms, which way is just a little bit easier, a little lighter. And then does that movement fit congruently into the rest of the movement of your head and shoulders and arms? So roll your head, moving your shoulders, and see which way the pelvis is invited to roll. Does it want to roll a little left or a little right? Or maybe there's no connection at all. It may be very subtle. It may be more of a flink than an actual movement. The flink is that feeling and thinking the movement, where there isn't actually a lot of movement, but the sensation of potential is very palpable. And then pause your pelvis. The other movement that the pelvis can do is to rock back and forth. If you've ever been taught the pelvic tilt exercise, that helps demonstrate the backward rolling of your pelvis, where your lower back gets a little closer to the floor, or the forward rolling of your pelvis, where you increase the arch in your lower back. So just try that movement a couple times, rocking your pelvis on your sacrum bone, back and forth. And then in time, begin to see if there's any connection to one of those movements being a little easier and fitting into the rest of the pattern that you're discovering with your head, your shoulders, your arms, your spine, and your ribs. You can start the movement from your pelvis and see how the rest of your trunk follows, starting from the center of yourself, letting it expand upward into your shoulders and head. Or you can start with the turning of your head, feeling the familiar pattern that you're beginning to understand more, and let it flow down into the invitation of movement in your pelvis. And each time you come back to neutral, rest thoroughly. Really pause and feel, what does it take to re-evoke the movement in this direction that we're currently identifying as your easier, more habitual way of moving. Rolling your head, letting your shoulders and your arms follow, your trunk and your pelvis. And then again, pausing, there's yet another movement that may be possible in the pelvis. And as we consider all of these three singular movements, of course, any combination of them are used in genuine functional movement. But the last one is just the lifting of the pelvis from side to side, which actually, as the pelvis raises on the right side, the right leg relatively gets a little shorter. As the pelvis raises on the left side, the left leg relatively gets a little shorter. So it's a side-to-side movement. It involves your ribs a little more on the sides. And see if you can feel which one of these directions is easier. Which one of these directions does your pelvis naturally flow into? What combination of movements does your pelvis just slide into when you let yourself be free enough to just let go? Follow your own natural asymmetrical preferences, letting your ribs go, your shoulders, your head. And just as best as you can, staying with the one direction, the one easy direction, turning your head, letting your shoulders follow that preferential direction started at your head, down your spine and ribs, your arms and hands, into your pelvis, and of course tracking it all the way down your legs. If you've noticed the little bit of rolling in or out of your arms, you may begin to notice a desire for your legs to roll a little in or out. Maybe one of your knees wants to bend slightly and draw up, just easily. Just a natural extension of letting yourself fall into the movements that are easy, the patterns that your body just seems to know without thinking. As automatic as part of your breath, breathing in and falling into those preferential movements, and breathing out and just surrendering yourself back to a neutral position. Or what if you were to breathe out and roll your head and move into that pattern? And then breathe in, coming back to neutral. Sometimes an inhalation has the sensation of a little more effort, breathing in, coming to neutral, holding yourself in what you think to be center, and breathing out and just letting go into your complete asymmetrical, easy, preferential pattern of movement, and feeling more and more of what's involved in that, in your trunk, your legs, your ankles, your feet. Imagining as if you were just floating in water, and with your exhalation you just fell into a little turning of your head, a lifting or a dropping of your shoulder, opening on one side, closing on the other. Whatever it is for you. We'll have as many different versions of patterns of movement as we have different people playing with this particular exploration. No right, no wrong, just the willingness to let go and feel and surrender to the sensations of this moment. And then just pause for a moment. Just give it a break. And as you pause, notice, have you been being easy and gentle with yourself? Are you noticing any aches or pains that maybe weren't there previously? And what does that mean? Are you trying hard? Are you working at it? Are you pushing past that initial information of resistance? Are you not used to spending so much time with yourself in the land of sensation? We're used to spending so much time with ourselves in the land of thought, to the point that we let our thoughts think us, and we often don't feel like we have any choice or control over these habitual thoughts that we think over and over and over again. And one way to slow the thoughts and ground them into the true story of your life is through the sensations of your body. So again, with your legs long, gently rolling your head to your preferential side, little by little let the movement grow into your shoulders. Let it grow into your arms and hands, through your trunk, pelvis, into your legs, into your joints, just letting any of your joints bend or move in whichever way they just seem to soften into. And with each breath towards the habitual movements, just let it grow. Again, not pushing past any resistances, not efforting to make it bigger, but just flowing it. What can you do to flow the movement a little bigger, a little larger, a little more of you involved? What part of you haven't you begun yet to feel that's already moving? Your abdomen, maybe. Is there some gliding of your shoulder blades in the back of you across your ribs? Which way do your eyeballs move as you roll your head to the side? What about your jaw and your tongue? Does it move ever so subtly in the same direction that your head is rolling? And then pick one movement, one limb, either your arm, your leg, maybe it's your pelvis or your shoulders. And continue doing the movement with just that area of your body, the direction that you have found to be easiest. And turn your head in the opposite direction, gently. So turn your head in the opposite direction while moving the limb in the direction you had been moving it when your head was turning in the same direction to support the whole pattern. So your limb is moving with the pattern you become familiar with, and your head is turning opposite the pattern you become familiar with, while breathing. Just as easy and effortless. And then if you let your head roll again with the pattern of that limb, be it an arm or your leg or maybe even into your pelvis, is there some other part of your body that you can move opposite the pattern? So moving into the pattern with your head and the limb that you chose, but moving away from the pattern with some other part of your body simultaneously. We call this differentiation. It divides your attention. Because so much of what we do all day long is unconsciously coming from these habitual patterns. How do we broaden our awareness and our consciousness to feel more, to feel different, to let our sensations bring us into the peaceful moment of now, instead of the often frenetic moments that our mind is recreating over and over again in our heads, either because of its experience of pain or just its experience of too much to do in a busy life. And then let that differentiation go and move everything in the same direction of your pattern several times. And now each time you move into your pattern, move intentionally back to neutral, and then make a little movement in the exact opposite of your pattern. So you'll go into your pattern, you'll identify all the nuances of rotations and ups and downs and pressures, as many as you can, and you come back to neutral, and you take a little movement in the opposite direction. So if your head, for example, is rolling a little to the right and up, then you'll move your head a little bit to the left but down. Not up, but down, the opposite direction. If your right shoulder, say, is going a little bit down and back, then the opposite shoulder will go a little bit up and forward. So you're not really doing the same movement on the opposite side. You're almost, well, it's not a mirror image either. As you come back to neutral, you're moving through neutral and in the exact opposite. So what's up becomes down, what's right becomes left, what's heavy becomes light, what's short becomes long. Notice where your attention goes. Does it stay focused on your head, on your breath? Shift your attention from a part. You might just be feeling a part of the movement and trusting everything going along. And then shift back to the whole. Can you just feel your whole being floating back and forth into the preferential pattern and out of it in the opposite direction. Into it with the breath, out of it with the breath. Again, each time just growing it a little bigger, a little more, with no more effort. More attention without more effort. How do we do that? How do we train our brain to attend to what we choose to attend to? And begin to release its grip on us, its habitual, unconscious patterns of thinking us into the same kind of existence over and over, to free ourselves to have different experiences of life, of movement, of pain and joy. And then just relax. And just feel how you're resting here now. At rest, feeling differences. Are there more differences or more similarities between how you experience the sensations of your shoulders on the left and the right? Your shoulder blades and the back of your ribs on each side. The curve in your lower back, more same or more different than when we started? How your pelvis rests on the floor and the weight of your buttocks being supported. The length, the weight, the support you receive under each leg, each arm, your head. And then take your time. See if you can breathe yourself into your pattern and see how that easy pattern can bring you up into sitting with no more effort than you've put into the rest of the lesson. And how can you find your way up to standing, appreciating the differences instead of forcing an imposed symmetry? Whenever you're ready, just begin exploring your way, taking your time. There are no hurries. Eventually, with time, you'll find yourself in standing. And once standing, take some time to again go in and out of the pattern. Is it the same or is it different than when you were lying? And then see what you can feel in walking. Just taking your time. And how can you use these differences to wake up in life? To bring yourself out of the unconscious sleep that walks us through life into wakeful moments of alertness, appreciation, freedom of movement. Thank you.